You're back with us with Republica. We're still talking to Toti Casiño'S Senate Crusade. Toti, I'll just reiterate before the break. 2019, your own prediction, the optics and the substance of it will be a replication of previous elections as long as it's with Smartmatic.
Correct.
That's
And
categorical, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. In fact, they came up with 82 enhancements in the recent hearing. 82. 82 is already saying that's not really a good machine, a new technology. Why enhance by 82 times? And what they're trying to do is just to cover up the fraud.
Okay.
All
Now, let me get this in. If there are 82 enhancements, can this therefore be a replication of the past or a better version?
It's a better version to cover the fraud.
But the fraud will still be there.
The
That's
fraud
what you're
will be
saying.
definitely there. Definitely. That's
So
why
these are just cosmetics. That's what you're saying.
Well, it is a cover-up. It's something to, they claim to say that to improve, so that all those lapses will already be corrected, but actually they're not already corrected.
For example,
They're allowing the Board of Election Inspectors to directly alter the date if they find it not to be current for one.
okay.
And then they were saying that they're going to recognize the digital signature
There will be a digital signature.
issued by Smartmatic. Now, let me expand that a little further.
Okay.
The digital signature under the law
Yes.
should be issued by a third party, where you have what you call a certificate of authority. Now, that they have a server. They have a big server that, and the one that's going to be issued that key must submit the following documents. You have to submit your birth certificate, your
Personal data.
your personal data, and your government ID that you are a legitimate, duly recognized teacher in one school, etc., etc. And then it goes through a process, and then they give you that key. And then the recipient, which is a board of canvasser, they go to the same motion. All right. Now, when there's already been arranged and structured, just like a driver's license, when
Yes,
you go
yes.
to an LTO,
Yeah.
then they can go on. Now, try to imagine if you have the canvassing server, and then the transmission is coming from only the designate or from the legitimate source.
Authorized, yes.
Being which precinct, which province, which districts. When they send and the board of canvassers says, yes, that belongs to my jurisdiction,
Yeah.
I will open that file with this public key that I hold as a board of canvassers, then I will allow the transmission.
Yes.
All right? Then, okay. But if it comes from another province or another town,
Yes.
it will not open.
Yes.
Because the key will recognize each other.
Yeah.
In the case of Smartmatic, it does not have that restriction.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, wherever you're coming from, they just say
It will receive anything.
anywhere. Exactly.
Okay.
So that's a clear case that it's not secured. So
Okay.
in fact, in Section 7 of Republic Act 1967, it's very specific that this has to provide the security features.
Okay.
All right, and it's going to be auditable.
Okay.
Right? Now, if this thing is already flawed from day one in 2010, 2013, and again in 2019, what good is it? Just to comply with the law that they issued a digital signature. And the second thing, Smartmatic is not registered with the Department of ICT. Who is the authority by the government to allow this agency to issue such digital signature? Because to become a root certified authority or a government certificate, you must register with the Department of ICT. Smartmatic is not registered.
There are so many questions going into my head now.
But you can already see, you can already follow what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Again, it's the legitimate issue is not being followed.
In short, Smartmatic is following the law in form but not in substance.
Not in substance.
Okay, what is the ICT doing also about this?
Okay, the Department of ICT has already come up with the guidelines. They already have a
Has it
manual.
reviewed basically what Smartmatic is doing based on performances in the
Well,
past?
you see, there's an independence of offices. You have a constitutional body and you have an executive branch here. Who in his right mind, dictate over a constitutional body, except in Congress?
Okay.
That is the triumvirate that you have to engage with. So the executive branch cannot go directly.
Yes.
Because you have to go through Congress and to tell them, hey, you have to tell this agency to comply with the law.
Can't the ICT come up with its own independent report, review based on...
Well, the chairman of the Comelec Advisory Council is the secretary of the Department of ICT.
Okay.
But then, under the law, it says there clearly, it's still Comelec who has the last say.
Okay.
That's being subject for abuse.
Uh-huh.
Although in the preamble of that law, it says it has to be guaranteed honest, transparent, auditable, election. But from the preamble already, it's already been violated.
I'm hearing talks regarding invisible ink. Is it possible that you have a ballot that that's already been pre-shaded but individuals cannot see that it has been pre-shaded because it's an invisible ink, and that when it's fed into the machine, I don't know, the photo process, the warming process of the machine allows the invisible ink to be darker.
Okay, the invisible ink has been there, would you believe, since the 1960s, 1970s. All you need is a black light.
Okay.
If you write something using an invisible ink, you cannot see it with your naked eye.
Okay.
But when you put a black light,
You can see it.
you can see it.
Okay.
Now, what does that affect? When you pass it through the scanner built into that machine,
Yeah.
if you've not shaded where that invisible ink is shaded, if
Yeah.
you shade another candidate's name, then you have an overvote.
Okay.
Then that nullifies your ballot.
Okay.
But if you shaded where the invisible ink is,
Uh-huh.
then it will count it as a legitimate vote.
Okay.
So it's one way to kill the vote of the other party. And they can do that even before they submit the ballot papers into the voting precinct. So what do? You have to subject all of those ballots through a pre-run, and that it could be not, and it cannot be recognized by the machine.
Okay. Is it also possible that you will have a lot of spoiled ballots because
No.
it was already pre-shaded. Let's say for one position, there's already one or two, there's already one being voted
Okay.
upon, and then there will be 2 or 3 votes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's highly possible, and it's, that you're talking about an invisible ink. Guess
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
COMELEC came up with a memorandum circular reducing the threshold to 25%, the mark.
Yes, the markings, yes.
Okay? Instead of a full
Yes,
shade
yes.
of about 75%, 100%,
Yes.
not only 50%, they would recognize even a 25%. A dot.
I
So
don't know.
whether that ballot paper has that invisible ink or not, even in the remote areas where there are operators, they can just get a hold of that ballot paper and just put a dot, and they can already consider that as already tampered votes.
I have the little hairs of my back standing up, Toti, because my sense is like, I imagine a group of people being given such
Yeah.
a thick ballot,
Yes.
this thick, and all they're doing, they're in a hurry, they're just doing,
Yep, exactly.
just to
Exactly.
expedite everything so that
Exactly,
it gets
exactly.
done.
Now, COMELEC said it has to be done in a sealed pack.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, what do you call that? Sealed pack that is, they give a term, ice pack or something, that it is going to be scanned, right? But would the general public know that? Not necessarily, right? Because by the time they get it, it's already been torn out apart, and it's already been ready for distribution. So even the Board of Election Inspectors may not even know that. All right. Even if you look at the rules and the guidelines of the previous elections, they didn't even say you have the Board of Elections should verify that the pack comes into this, it's already closed.
Okay.
So there's a lot of flaws there. Whether they include that in the enhancement, that's yet to be seen.
Do we even have an inventory of the number of PCOS machines out there?
Good question, right? As of recent count, there's roughly about almost 100,000 units out there. Some have not yet been surrendered back. We have heard of that story. So whether there's a good accounting and a good audit, whether all this inventory has been accounted for. And then there's another report that Smartmatic was saying that some of the machines can no longer be used because it was not stored properly.
Okay.
But then again, under the law, it's stated there that the machine that they have to provide has the capability to be stored accordingly, and that the stewardship should be done, that it was safe and so on. Like, if you're going to sell a product, you may provide the entire cabinet.
Okay.
Not just where it's going to be exposed to elements. Now, if you provide them the necessary cabinet so that wherever you deliver it, it's wholly secured, even though in the hottest or humid area, it's secured, then as a provider, then you already complied with the law.
Well, with the way we're discussing the upcoming elections, this seems to be an election meant for failure, no? The failure of our...
Well, meant for the cheats to win again.
To forfeit the sovereign people's will. And
Right.
with the way you're talking, Toti, I mean, what is the benchmark for KDP and for you to say that we won in the election, we got voted into the Senate, or we awakened our people, the discourse is enough victory for us?
It's multi-pronged.
Okay.
All right. It's a pretty tall order that because we don't have the kind of machinery and the muscle like the traditional politics. We don't have the kind of money that they plundered.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But using your outfit like GNN and even the social media, and we're slowly clamoring, and we get the type of audience and the kind of backup supporters. Yes, okay, then we create ourselves, let's say, a website where the volunteers can register, and then they can locate where they are, so that we would know demographically and logistically where they are, and give them some kits how to organize themselves in their respective areas. and be able to do the kind of voluntarisms that we're looking forward to. Because it's all an act of, voluntarism.
Yes.
We cannot afford to pay them. But if there are really those well-meaning Filipinos among us,
This is where civic-mindedness comes in already.
yes, exactly.
Yes.
And if they can see that there is power even by the numbers, even in the power of one, if you've heard of that book.
Yes.
If they can say,
be a majority.
and it becomes the majority. Little did they know that even with one, they thought they're meaningless, but actually you combine all of them, it's a force to reckon with. Then and only then you can say, okay, then we can clamor. And then if they can submit all the complaints through that website, all right, and then send it to that website or a Facebook account, they will check that, they will find that out anyway through Facebook, and then they can submit all the evidence that will be already subjected for hearing. And then you flood the different courts with cases left and right. And that's already a barometer to see that the pulse of the constituents already at a figure way too high that they have to really, attend to these cases, be it in the regional or in the COMELEC or in the SET or the HRET, wherever the cases may be filed and be flooded, by all means, and even the Supreme Court.
Or you could have a shortcut, which is elect a senator who will get rid of Smartmatic, who will definitely put in their platform that when they get elected as senator, they will get rid of Smartmatic. So that's why I'm saying elect a senator that will get rid of Smartmatic. That way, succeeding elections will be clean, as they say, honest, orderly, and peaceful elections.
Correct.
That should be the catch line, the tagline of KDP.
We can bank on already for local technologies. I mean, we don't have to rely on foreign technology. Even Smartmatic doesn't even carry that technology. They got that from a Canadian company called Dominion Voting System. So what do they claim? And they take note, Smartmatic comes from a country that's in an upheaval right now.
I'll ask you, Toti, there is a pilot testing area for COMELEC in Cebu City. They want to make use of fingerprinting to vote. Good, bad? How does that look to you?
On one side, on one extreme, yes, that's good. It will identify who the voter is. On the other side, you have to amend the law.
Okay.
Because under the law, the old law, or the Omnibus Election Code, election could be held on a designated polling precinct. Until that is amended, you cannot use. I mean, you can do that on the polling site. Yes. Done. But if you want to do that elsewhere, you cannot. Those are restrictions. So if you're going to comply with the same law, having that will be good. And then once you already have that, make sure that the same hardware is connected to your voting machine. You cannot separate the two. Because if you separate the two, it's useless. So once you already put that marker as the one to recognize the voter, and then it connects to the voting machine right close to it, which will open the screen for you to start selecting your vote, and then prints out for you to physically confirm, verify whether the machine did count your vote, and then you enter that into the ballot box or have it run again to be scanned, then by all means, that's a perfect technology. And that technology is nothing new. That's already available not only elsewhere in the world, but even the Philippines.
What do you do in a situation where, like, for example, in Cebu City, you have, I think I mentioned this off camera, you have 42,000 new voters from outside the city itself.
Okay. With respect to that, there's already under Republic Act 8189, which is the continuing voters registration, and then the filing of illegitimate voters in your area. You have to go through the courts to contest that. And that's not only one. I heard of stories that even other election registrars create their own precincts out of non-existing voters. And they could do that because they have the power.
Or they can transfer you to a different precinct and you don't want to vote anymore because your name is no longer there.
Right. So under that same law that I mentioned, Republic Act 828, it is required that the COMELEC should post the computerized voters list 90 days before election.
I have a question for you, Toti. You're a computer savvy person. I don't know, maybe I'm just dreaming, but is it possible that the ATM approach can be done for voting where I don't have to be in a particular precinct? As long as the computer recognizes my fingerprint, I can vote anywhere in the entire Philippines for the particular individuals where my thumbprint is registered in when we return.